Hello, my name is Austin Vogt, and today I will be analyzing case study number 2, Urban Crime, the Move to Community Policing. And I'm going to be analyzing that case study by using the four-step analytical method, which starts off by identifying the issue presented in the case study. I'm then going to identify the various stakeholders, the people who are affected by the actions taken in the case study, and I'm also going to identify the stakeholders' perspectives, why and how these people are affected in the case study. Lastly, I'm going to come up with a recommendation to address the issue in the case study, and I'm going to form that recommendation by my own personal experience, further research, and the opinion of an expert. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. To begin analyzing this case study, I will give a brief summary of the study to ensure everyone in the class is on the same page. The case study takes place in Troy, New York in the late 1970s. Police Commissioner Grace Tarn is advocating for a new approach to policing, a community-based approach. Commissioner Tarn states that the city of Troy has 3 precincts, or districts, that have had a large surge in crime in recent years, most notably narcotics trafficking and dealing, often ending in violence, gang activity including drug trade, distributing guns, and property crimes, daytime burglary, only partly accounted for by the increase in the drug activities, and lastly, domestic violence. Tarn's community policing plan would be set up only in these crime-ridden areas, kind of like an experiment to kind of further test her plan. Tarn adds that her plan would not require any new resources. The police department would reallocate the existing resources. The mayor of Troy, known by many in the city as Hisner, and others at the plan proposal meeting, including Arpad Gasper, an official for the city's public health department, are naturally skeptical, as this is a big overhaul for the police department. It is revealed later in the study that T.G. Singh, the chief of police, is more in favor of the traditional crackdown-style policing, as he himself puts it. The issue in this case study is whether the City of Troy's police department should adopt Commissioner Tarn's community-based policing plan, or whether the city should stick with a more traditional crackdown style of policing. I think it's important to understand the history of modern policing for this case study. Many Americans during the start of our country's history were skeptical of the idea of a police force. Many feared a police force would act like the military or infringe on the rights of citizens. Sir Robert Peel was a Minister of Parliament in Britain in the 1820s and was one of the first advocates for an organized police force. He would craft the principles that make the police force a success. He established that the purpose of police is to prevent crime and maintain order. Trust between the police and the public is also imperative. The use of force can only be used as a last resort when other forms of de-escalation fail. Police must remember that they are there to serve the public. Because of Sir Robert Peel's ideas, the idea of police gained traction and his ideas served as the foundation of modern policing. So what is crackdown policing? What is community policing? The biggest difference between the two different police approaches boils down to a difference in philosophy. Police Commissioner Tarn sums up why community policing is different than crackdown policing in a memo in the case study. Although community policing has no single definition, this is what she writes, all advocates of this approach emphasize certain themes. An emphasis on order maintenance, perhaps even at some sacrifice of the traditional police function, law enforcement. The next theme would be extending police operations through the supportive activities of ordinary citizens, such as Neighborhood Watch. The next theme would be street cops acting preventatively as problem solvers rather than mere after-the-fact cleaner-uppers of messy situations. These aims require less hierarchy, less control of cops through direct supervision, more reliance on police officers acting independently, and more emphasis on teams of social program specialists. Crackdown policing consists of a more rigid structure of authority, one where officers act in a uniform manner. The emphasis is on dealing with crime after the fact with high rates of arrests. Conversely, the community policing aims to prevent crime before it happens. This is done by improving police-community relations. It's about putting a face to the police. Community policing also aims to provide resources to the community. Tarn's plan specifies that police units would not consist just of officers, but social workers and health service members. Community policing also has a less centralized structure of authority where officers have more discretion and can handle situations more independently. Let's take a look at the stakeholders in this case study. The various people and groups that could be potentially affected by community policing are the Mayor of Troy, Hisner, Grace Tarn, the Police Commissioner, proposing the community policing approach, the Chief of Police, Singh, who wants to conserve the more traditional policing approach, the Police Department, the City of Troy social workers, and the general population of the City of Troy. The first stakeholder we want to take a look at is the Mayor of Troy, Hisner. Hisner could be greatly affected by the success of either policing initiative. As the city mayor, it is one of Hisner's duties to try and reduce crime in his city. Crime rates and gang activity reflect on the City of Troy and by extension the mayor himself, Hisner. His approval ratings and perception by the town's population could be greatly impacted by the success or failures of Tarn or Singh's proposal. The next stakeholder to analyze is Grace Tarn, the police commissioner. Tarn is the one proposing the revolutionary advance to community-based policing and because of that has a lot at stake. Her reputation at the police department and in the community at large is dependent on a positive result should her proposal be implemented. If community policing should result in abject failure, however, her career in law enforcement could be greatly damaged. Police Chief T.G. Singh also has a lot on the line in this case study. Singh is the one who is fighting to keep the standard mode of operation for the Troy City Police Department. Like Commissioner Tarn, Singh's position as police chief could be compromised if crime rates increase under his preferred system. The police department of Troy as a whole also will be impacted by whichever proposal wins out. If Tarn gets her way and a community-based approach is implemented, the everyday activities police engage in would change drastically. They would enjoy a lot more freedom when it comes to how they interact with the public. The role of officers would change from punisher to problem solver. Being a police officer comes with a certain percentage of risk, and a change in the department would affect how officers operate. Like police officers, social workers would also see changes under the community policing initiative. There would be a lot more workers out in the streets rather than in an office or in a clinic. Health and welfare services would be mobile and would provide resources for the community of Troy. I've saved the group that could potentially be most impacted for last, and that is the population of Troy itself, more specifically the precincts in which the community policing might first target. With the right police approach in place, citizens of Troy would enjoy a city with better access to social and health services, as well as a better feeling of safety with lower crime rates in their neighborhoods. Police interactions could potentially improve, as well as police-community relations as a whole. Let's talk about the pros and cons to crackdown policing, championed by Police Chief Singh. The case study refers to crackdown policing as hard policing, being characterized by more arrests, stern suppression of neighborhood disorder, strict law enforcement, and the use of specialized police forces to crime-ridden areas. The positives for this style of policing include that it can be effective at limiting crime, at least in the short term. This harder style of policing can also act as a deterrent to crime. A potential con for crackdown policing is the potential for abuse. With higher rates of arrest, you run the risk of people's civil liberties being infringed upon, for example, due process. Crackdown policing can also worsen police-community relations. Community policing also comes with a list of pros and cons as well. One of the biggest positive effects of this kind of policing is the improved police relations. Because the police play a bigger role in their communities, they often are respected more. This type of policing also takes a multi-pronged approach, where street units often comprise of social and health workers as well as the officers. The last main positive point is that community policing aims to prevent crime rather than just responding to it after the fact. Despite all the positives, community policing does come with a list of negatives. Because the units require social and health workers, this approach is often considered costlier as it is more resource intensive. This type of policing is also less effective in larger areas. I got the chance to interview former police officer Dale Anger. Mr. Anger served in various police departments in Pinellas County, Florida. He has served in multiple roles of law enforcement over the past 30 years in his career. He worked in community policing unit in the city of Dunedin, Florida, which is perfectly relevant to the case study. But he was also an interrogator as well as a DARE officer, so he also has experience dealing with urban crime. The first question I asked Officer Anger was his thoughts on community policing. He shares a unique perspective as he was on a community policing unit in his career. The first thing he pointed out is that community policing is great, especially in smaller areas or downtown. As he put it, the role of community policing is to be proactive rather than reactive. He talks about his experience in the community. he worked in various youth summer and after-school camps where the officers would play basketball every Friday with the kids. The community policing units also helped with parades and weekend festivals. His answer to my question really drove the main theme of community policing home to me. It's about improving police relations within the community. The second question I asked was, is community policing really that much more effective at improving police relations? He said in his experience it did. With most people in the communities he worked in knowing his own name, he was often called Officer E. He said that even the mischievous young people, or problem children as he called them, knew the officers' names. Because of this more integrated approach, he said that it is much easier to control urban crime before it occurs. I then asked, with community policing being most effective with police-community relations, which type of policing is most effective with controlling crime? Officer Anger stated that the biggest factor when determining what type of police approach to use is the size of the community. If the community is large, community policing might not be as effective as hoped. However, given that the community is a manageable size, community-based policing is best for controlling crime as it emphasizes crime prevention. He did want to make it clear that community policing does require more resources and requires more funding. My fourth question was, what has changed most in your particular police department over your career? His answer was interesting. He said that the biggest change in policing was how officers are viewed by the public. When he first joined the police force, they could do no wrong in the public eye. When the officer did something you did, when the officer told you to do something, you did it, no ifs, ands, or buts. Nowadays, he is saddened to see most well-intentioned officers being looked down upon because of a few bad apples. I then asked Mr. Anger if there's anything he would like the class to take away, what would that be? He says, and I quote, "No matter what type of approach a police department embraces, every person that puts on the uniform is a human being. We all get into the job to help people, and we all have husbands, wives, children, etc. Give us a chance, talk to us. With that being said, you must remember that police officers are public servants and that they are there to serve the public." Based on my own personal experience, research, and the opinions of the expert I interviewed, my recommendation to the City of Troy is to embrace the community-style police approach. I do want to be clear that I am aware that no system is perfect and community policing has its shortcomings. I would say to the City Council of Troy to enact policies that capitalize on the positive effects of community policing that also try to help mitigate the negative effects. I ultimately chose this recommendation based on the fact that Commissioner Tarn's plan is to apply this initiative to targeted areas where community policing works best. Based on the interview I conducted as well as my own research, I've come to the conclusion that community-based policing is the most effective approach to reduce crime, provide multiple different kinds of resources to people in the streets, as well as improve police relations, a topic that has grown in significance over the past few decades. This type of policing has demonstrated to best abide by the principles of modern policing laid out by Sir Robert Peel. I did want to showcase my personal business card, so if anyone would like to contact me with further questions, please feel free to ask and try and get in touch with me. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.